Lord, teach me how to love my wife.
Lord, teach me how to love my husband.
Lord, teach my wife how to love me.
Lord, teach my husband how to love me.
My name is Mary Ann Endres. I was born in 1941. I was a nun who fell in love.
My name is Frank Endres. I was born in 1936. I was a celibate priest and I fell in love with a woman.
As a child, I was raised in a traditional Catholic family. And I attended St. Aloysius Elementary School. And probably, I would say, most of our life was centered around being part of the parish, St. Al's. My dad was a professional baseball player. He was a catcher. And he played with the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, the Philadelphia Athletics, and the Cleveland Indians. And as kids, we just were grounded with my mom's guidance that we didn't think anything of it, even though he was rather a celebrity in Buffalo. And when he hit a home run, a carton of Wheaties would come home, and that was fun. But at one event, just to keep us grounded and humbled, one day he brought a Cadillac home to surprise her. And when she woke up in the morning, she saw this car in the driveway and said, "Bud, take it back. We don't need it." So he did. And that was just an example of, she did keep us grounded.
My parents were immigrants from Germany, and my father grew up in Austria from the age of 16 till age 20 when he came to the United States. They were very strong, you might say, traditional Catholics of those days. So somewhat almost blindly obedient, or as they used to describe them, pray, pay, and obey.
I had 2 sisters, 2 brothers, and we went all the way through elementary school together.
I grew up as one of 11 children in the fruit belt of Buffalo.
I always felt a draw to religion, even as an elementary student. And of course participating in dances, etc., what you do in high school. It was always there in the back of my mind. And also at that point I was working after school, my junior and senior year, and had different activities. We played softball, etc. But all said and done, when I graduated, I thought I would enter the convent.
In 3rd grade, the teacher, the only lay teacher in a Catholic school in those days, said, "Draw a picture of what you want to be when you grow up." And I drew a picture, and it had the priest facing the altar, as they did in those days, with the altar boy in cassock and surplice, the white cover. And I said, "I'm going to be a priest." I guess I inherited my mother's strong will. And I knew 2 things. I had a vocation early, and I knew I was never going to be an artist. And I was a skinny kid. My older brother was pretty athletic and strong. And I felt that I had to build up, so I started bodybuilding, weightlifting. We did swimming at the nights. We played handball, basketball. And we did that at the seminary too. We had all the traditional sports. But My weights were always part of my life. That was my base.
Went to school, to college. I had joined a teaching community, so we had to go to school and get a college degree, and that took time. But after temporary vows, we had 5 more years before final vows.
The minor seminary was 4 years high school and then the 2 years college.
I was told to go to Mount St. Joe's Teachers College, and I really was looking forward to that, teaching 4th grade and decorated, you know, got the room all set. That was the end of August. Then, just before it was time to go to the classroom, the Reverend Mother called me in and said, I have to assign you another teaching assignment. And that was to St. Francis Xavier, which I had no idea about the parish, about the school. And I was disappointed because I was looking forward to 4th grade.
My first assignment after ordination of March 17th, 1962 was at Cherry Creek, New York, and it's called the Missionary Apostolate. So we spent a year alone, cooking, cleaning, preaching, teaching, whatever was needed as part of a missionary experience. I can't say that I was the typical, stereotypical priest, whatever. I did not fit the mold. I was there alone. And all of a sudden, there was a mood that I never experienced before, even though I was busy and everything else. But it is not good for man to be alone. Genesis. And there were 2 young adults there, and they were inseparable, 2 young ladies. It's important for me to say they were young ladies. And, you know, I could tell I was attracted to the one, but no problem. They were always together and I was running around. But the word loneliness became real. First time in my life. I was fulfilled as a priest, but not as a celibate priest. And they're separate. In 1139, they became a package. If you wanted to be a priest, you had to accept celibacy. Whether you had that charism, a gift or not, you had to accept it. Not very human, but good for the institution. And then I went to St. Bridget's, and as I say, I was to sit in my room, and this is where I started changing. I became, they had a phrase, the angry young man. The seeds were planted there. Sit in my room. And I had a seat at a recliner, and one of my classmates would visit me, and I'd say, this is my suffering seat. I was supposed to wait for the phone to ring. Well, nobody liked this guy, so they didn't call. But most priests lasted 2 months. And they put in for rotation, they left. Well, I lasted 5 months. And then I was transferred to St. Francis Xavier. And I would hope it would be a change. I think I was there about a year and a half or so, and the nuns come back after vacation. They have a new nun there. And there's Sister Mary Warren. And she's full of life. And beautiful smile. You know, all those nice things.
When I first saw him, I thought, he's pretty stuck up. He used to walk. He exercised and walked around like well, he was just stuck up. That was my impression of him. I said, oh my gosh, there he's walking around like this. So then when he asked me to work with him, I thought, oh, well, okay, I'll get to maybe know him a little differently than the way I saw him. So
I welcome her to work with me on the liturgy. You know, she handled the music. She's a music teacher. And also with the youth. We put on these interracial and sometimes ecumenical. We did a Christian Hanukkah service one time. And so the rabbi came to our parish. And then we did the same thing at the Y at another time. But she was involved in things like that.
That was good. I learned a whole lot about it. He was really wonderful. And he was good looking, and I was in my 20s, and here I am, a nun, and I think, oh boy, this shouldn't be happening, but you know, he's pretty handsome. And so that sort of stuck with me, and I thought, dismiss it because I'm supposed to be a nun and it shouldn't happen.
Like I say, she was vibrant, she was very social, a lot of the gifts that I did not have, because obviously the woman complements the male. And what she was describing is, as one seminary professor said, he says, Frank, you don't walk, you strut. Well, I'm doing heel and toe walking because I'm conscious of bodybuilding or whatever. But, you know, she got to know me better, and I got to know her better, obviously. And when I go to the school, I go classroom to classroom, and her classroom was special because of her. But you weren't really surfacing a lot of that. You weren't supposed to.
So after 2 years teaching over at St. Francis Xavier, I was reassigned to 7th and 8th grade to a country parish in Hamburg.
I didn't really acknowledge it, but it did leave a void. And I could tell that I wasn't as good a celibate as I could have been, because I knew what it was to relate to a woman very closely and compatibly and everything else. So, but you're always on guard. That's what it was. It was not your gift, but you had to be on guard.
I was rather lonely, and I asked to take courses, and they granted me a tutorial course of taking statistics, which wasn't the easiest thing to do tutorially, but I did.
Sometime after she left and was in the country, and I used to visit her with another friend of mine.
Ice skating and snowmobiling, and which I actually did. We had that opportunity. So it was really enjoyable. I loved having them come out, and the nuns and I would do stuff.
I felt we were getting too close.
Then I thought, this is distracting to the point where I became a nun to become a nun, and now I have this other element of a possible interest in somebody else. So in my mind, I thought, this probably shouldn't be continuing.
So I called her. It's on Holy Thursday, the institution of the priesthood, and I called her and I said, Sister Mary Warren, I have something to tell you. You know, I think, and before I could say anything, she says, well, I got to tell you this. I think we're getting too close. I think we should stop having contact.
Not to have contact with each other via letters or visits for 2 years.
And I was really angry. In fact, I looked at one of my notes from those days and I said, damn it, she had to say it first. But we both felt that way. And so we agreed that there would be no more contact, no Christmas cards, no calls, no nothing. Then I was transferred to Grand Island, okay? And, but the loneliness did not leave me. It was there all along, and I was having to acknowledge that. But again, very involved with the youth and with the parish council, and working with the parish council, trying to add more grades, and the parish pastor resisting that. But and I was stressed there too. There was one assistant he was from Poland, and he was in a rectory, and I was living in a flat across from the old church, and he was suffering a lot. He was like, he was not acknowledged at the table because there were seminarians there. So we bore with him, and he ended up walking off the parish, and they picked him up on the street outside of Grand Island. They drove him down a bus depot, and he took off, just like that. There was another guy for a weekender. He's a very sociable guy, thank God, and we got along real well, but it just was, we didn't feel comfortable there. And then there was no room, so it was a cemetery there, and they bought a trailer for me to live in the cemetery. Not a cheery place.
We had, at least to keep the students busy, and that was sports, I had encouraged them to participate in this Monsignor Martin athletic event in Buffalo. So we were there and participating, and prior to actually getting to the event, I happened to see Frank with his group from St. Francis Xavier.
I'm taking my, I don't know, 65, 75 elementary school kids to the track meets at a local park, And here's this group from the country with a small group because they've got maybe 15, 20 kids. And so we're passing each other. I see her, she sees me. Good afternoon, Sister Mary Warren.
Good afternoon, Father Frank.
And we just kept walking, okay?
But inside me, something was sparked. I thought, that certainly is hard. So we continued on, and it was true, we didn't talk to each other or contact each other for the 2 years.
And I don't think I didn't reflect on it that much, but it was always there. It was probably more unconscious than conscious because you weren't allowed to enter into that. But that kind of blossomed when I got to, now I'm going to Grand Island, got to Grand Island and felt some of the stress again and the loneliness, alone in the crowd type of thing. And so I get up at night and 1, 2 in the morning, and my apartment was here in the old church. It was next door, and I go in there, and there was the vigil light on, the red light's always on, showing Blessed Sacraments there. And I turn maybe a low light on, and I walk up and down. What do I do? What do I do? I can't live this way. I'm not going to be one of these alcoholic priests or run around priests and all that. Not living your commitment. So it was a Sunday morning I woke up after doing this for months. Woke up on Sunday morning and I said, you know, I'm not living honestly. I can't live this way. It's not even healthy for me. And so I made up my mind that morning to leave. And one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit is joy. And I woke up and I got this great feeling of joy. I was delivered of a burden.
I began to think, I don't know if I really want to continue this way. But I had made final vows, and I still questioned whether I should be a nun. But my choice was I couldn't ride the fence of being part of dating or whatever other people would do, and yet I couldn't because I was a nun, or else become a cloister nun, and I thought, no, I can't do that. So I decided I would leave the community. And at that time, there were 175,000 nuns, and a lot were leaving, and today there are 47,000. So it dropped.
I'm a planner, so I said, well, if I'm going to do that, I want to get the dispensation. I don't want to be on the outside and not seen as still serving the Lord or whatever. And I got to find a job, and I got a place to live, find a place to live. And I made a 7-point plan, last one, and work on re-entry someday. So I was never kind of leaving the priesthood. I was taking, in my mind, a leave of absence.
So I made plans, and I could leave. I had to go to the Mother Superior and ask permission. It was harder to enter than it is to leave, really. So at that time, at O'Hearn, the changes were made in our dress too. When I entered, I had a full religious, well, like you'll call it garb or habit, we called it. And the only exposure were hands in your face. And during the course of the time there, due to the Vatican opening of the rules, we had modified habits, which meant lesser of the covering, and you could wear your hair normally or shorter skirt, whatever. Until finally, before I finally left, you were in street clothes. A person could dress like everyone else. So maybe a crucifix would designate you're a nun, or maybe not, depending on what you were going to do. And out of the clear blue, Frank had called and said he had something to tell me.
I got to share this with you. She said, I got to share something with you. I didn't know, she didn't know. And I says, I'm leaving the active ministry.
I was so pleased. I thought, well, I'm leaving too. So it was another God's will thing.
How about joy for both of us?
A couple of the nuns were totally shocked because I always contributed to the community in whatever they wanted me to do, and I got along with people, and it was that they were very shocked. But they understood that if that's what you're going to do, then you do it.
My focus was on start petitioning Rome, okay? So this was going on simultaneously because we were going to be like the first in the diocese to break rules or tradition since 1139 when they abolished married priesthood. Now that is a shock to the bishops and chancery officials, everybody, my classmates, and but not a shock to us because we're following the lead of what we feel is the Holy Spirit. We feel we're being led by the Spirit.
I went back to my home to live, and that was very, very difficult. My parents thought being a nun was the best thing, and I never ever told them really what it was like to live in a convent. It wasn't easy, but they thought the spiritual life and being a nun was the great calling. So going home, it was rather a disappointment to them that I left. But they agreed. They said, okay, you can come home. And before I left, I did get a job. I interviewed in schools, and I had a couple of offers, and I took one, and it was wonderful. It was the right one. But during that course, it was some of the people that knew I was in for 10 years totally, so they only knew me as a nun. So actually coming home, and I had questions, etc., and it wasn't easy, I'll say that much. And then we dated, and for a year, and then he asked me, proposed to me at Mass on August 6th, 1970, and I accepted, of course. And so then, before we could get married, because we wanted to get married in the Catholic Church, he had to get his laicization papers, which freed him to get married. And that took time.
I think we went to the bishop together first. And at this time, like about a year and a half before that, I went in with a beard and he told me, he couldn't look at me. He says, you got to shave, Father. I went home to shave because I'm protesting. I'm the angry young man. Now I come in a year and a half later and I got a woman next to me. A celibate priest with a woman. I says, Bishop, we'd like to get married. And we'd like to petition Rome to get the dispensation from celibacy, not priesthood. So now he's looking at me because I'm clean shaven, but he can't look at her because she's not supposed to be there. And he's a good man. This is hard for them because it's changing a 12th century rule. So we talk about our plans, and we got to write this cardinal to Rome, and that starts the whole process. I have a stack of letter 1.5 inches thick, back and forth with the chancery, with the bishop, and he was good. He always responded, and the tribunal where when my other classmate was there, and he wrote me letters. Your request has been sent to Rome, and they gave me different dates. They didn't want me to leave. I mean, they were at the point where we're making plans. I was living with my sister now, and I moved upstairs across the street from her. So we're discussing our plans up there, and the phone rings, and here's this Monsignor saying from the chancery, look at, we noticed that you wanted to be a chaplain. I said, Monsignor, that was a year and a half ago. And they disallowed that, and then I had gone in and complained about the stress, and 45 minutes later, a priest from the minor seminary asked to be assigned to the minor seminary, which is an honor for spiritual direction and teaching and guidance counseling. All that was after I complained. This is getting to me, and I had letters that said a sensation of strangulation. That was stress. So they told the priest, no, the old man depends on him. It wasn't just that. Who else could control this other priest? You know. And then I heard later this Monsignor had asked me for 2 high schools as guidance counselor. They refused. No, the old man depends on him again. Nothing I said meant anything. And that's when I knew that we had to do it ourselves.
It was suggested to us that, go before justice of the peace and various other situations. I said, no, I would get married in the church, but we had to wait for that.
So finally, I think it had been in the chancery for a while. They were hoping against hope that I would change my mind. When I tried to change my mind, Marion is sitting in the kitchen right there, and she's starting to cry, like they're going to woo me back. But anyhow, I said, no, we've made up our mind. I knew I cannot live that life. And it came, and then, so we could get married. So I called the guys at Night People down at Chippewa, the strip on Chippewa Street. Can you guys switch with me? I'm getting married on the 26th of December. And I said, sure, Frank, congratulations and all that. In fact, they were the first guys I told I was going to get married, but didn't even tell the pastor. So the guys at switched, and we had everything all set up, and we sent invitations out to
just a few friends and family.
And my classmates.
Yes,
my
very
classmates.
simple. And I had bought a dress and got flowers and all the things that go with the wedding. We had a couple bridesmaids and so on. And so it was all set to go. And then about a week before, if I recall, my mother had gone to a party, a Christmas party at school, and called me and said, the bishop called her and said, I cannot get married. On that date, I cannot get married. So, why? Because we had sent out invitations to people and it was made public, which there's a little problem with that. It wasn't really that public. I mean, we mailed invitations, but somebody had called and said they turned us in more or less that we had done this. So now the challenge was, what date can we pick to get married? Because we have every right to get married. And so in the interim, I returned my dress, and they were wonderful. They really, I mean, in those days, that might have been different, but they took it back. Flowers, everything was canceled. And so we just worked on setting a date to get married. And finally, a few days later, actually, the 30th was the day that was finally achieved after some phone calls with the bishop. And we got married at 11 o'clock on December 30th. And no one was there, no one could come, except the two witnesses, which were two priests. They shut the doors.
They were our bridesmaids and maid of honor.
And we got married, and no one, as I said, no one was there, and families weren't allowed even to come at all, outside, nothing. So anyhow, that was very simply done. And we had one person who happened to be a loyal friend from St. Francis Xavier met us outside and congratulated us. And we went. I wore an ordinary dress, and the two witnesses knew my father. One knew him very well, and so we talked baseball after our wedding, and that was the beginning of our wedding. Put your focus on what's important in life. And to us, it wasn't things. We started out with zero. We had nothing. I bought my first nice Mustang.
69 Mustang.
Which I loved. My dad said, there's the car, Marianne. Go get that car. Okay. I love it.
You weren't prepared for this loss of identity. And at one time, when this other priest and I were giving talks at a Catholic high school, a girls' high school, the nun gave me a medal. And on it, it's the priest raising his hands with the host, and it says, I am a priest. On the back, it says, Reverend Frank Biendris. I'm active. I didn't need this. I threw it in a drawer. Years later, when I'm going through this process, and I would ask the bishop when I was working night people, who am I, bishop? And he would say, you are a priest, Father. Like I say, he was a good man, good bishop. And what I did is pull this out of the drawer. And I wore this every day. It's now tarnished. Every day I am a priest. Because of the theology of priesthood, when bishop imposed hands, thou art priest forever, according to your Melchizedek. And the three sacraments, baptism, confirmation, holy orders, are indelible signs for all eternity. There is no such laicization as just a church rule that says we're restricting your function. They cannot deny your priesthood. If I remember, as even Ken Law says, if any man says that you are no longer a priest, let him be anathema, let him be condemned. That's an old church canon. So I was aware of all of that, but mostly it was the identity crisis. Who am I? Who am I? Because do I identify with the celibates? And I'm not celibate anymore. We're the married priests, but we're organized. It was such a consolation locally. We got together. We were all older men, and we had children. We called ourselves geriatric parents, or gerontological parents, because a lot of us were starting to go through this now. So we had support from our own married priests now. hadn't changed. My values hadn't changed. My faith hadn't changed. So how could they point the finger? And look who I was marrying. You know, and like people said, Frank, if you're going to get married, you know, if you can't take it, be a man and leave. But marry the right person. A Baptist minister told me this in Grand Island. He took me aside. 65-year-old retired. He says, Frank, if you have hope of coming back someday, and that was point 7, take leave of absence. But priestly honesty becomes honorable, and priestly relevancy becomes a reality. It wasn't in our time. So he took me aside and he said, Frank, marry the right woman. He said, she can make or break your ministry. And I listened to him. Look who I married. Okay? So it worked out quite well that way. But those were all the signs. My belief has not changed from then to now. And we still function, but in a limited capacity. We've been involved in the parish for all these years. We taught religion. We organized what was called Renew for 3 years. That was a commitment. And Marion had to watch the 4 kids during a lot of that because I was organizing all these 10 different committees. We did a lot of good work. So we were very heavily involved in parish work. I gave the 4 homilies at our marriages. The priest did he did the homily. I gave what was called a priest talk at the end. So, but my talk was a lot different than theirs. And 3 of the 4 stopped after 5-6 minutes. They stopped talking. One didn't. He tends to be more talkative. And then I had 10 minutes. My talk was a lot different on how they should love each other. The married priest talk, not the celibate priest talk. They couldn't say the same things because we're living it. We were not bitter.
Sad, disappointed,
yeah,
but never bitter and never saying, God, why did you allow this to happen? We didn't. It was a grace of God because it wasn't a happy situation. Very sad for families on top of leaving the convent and marrying a priest. I mean, it was unheard of. And part of the, I don't know if you called it, the rescript from Rome said we were supposed to move 100 miles away from where we lived and not tell anybody we're married. And, you know, some of the absurdity of that was hurtful, but we didn't do it. I mean, we stayed. And looking back, you don't know what road your life is going to take you, and the emotions of your goal that you pick out personally might not be the goal that's supposed to be for you in life. And letting go and seeing what happened is a beautiful story. I would have never thought, after being a nun for 10 years, meeting somebody who was religious like my life was, and the happiness that evolved in spite of all the disappointments and the sadnesses and the humiliation in some cases. It just made us stronger people. And I think I can say it was acceptance after a while. And it's only been blessed from then on.
There was a priest, when we told him our story, and he said, how can somebody hearing your story not believe that your marriage was the will of God? And that was the message, that we're following God's will, not the institutional, the human rules, the church rules. But we're following the rules of conscience, the rules of Scripture, and the rules of human love, natural love.
And the disappointment that came from Frank's parents, of course, he's going to be a married priest, and my parents, who were disappointed that I left, and here we are marrying each other. It was very difficult for quite a while.
Well, especially for her father and my mother.
Yes,
both very conservative.
It wasn't the typical, everybody's sharing all this wonderful, joyous information. And, you know, after a while, it all was healed. I can say the word healed.
Yes. Almost every priest that left, and eventually there were 125,000 of us worldwide. Almost every guy, when you read their chronicles from the vineyard, their stories, they said, well, they're going to change the celibacy rule in 3 years, I'll be back, or 5 years, 10 years. I think I said about 7, 8 years. It's been like we've been married 45 years, it's still not changed. And they're still hurting. They're ignoring the signs of the times. You know, let my priest grow. restore the priesthood. It's probably too late for us, but it doesn't matter. We have done our job. We have kept the faith. Run the race, kept the faith, whatever St. Paul. But what about later generations? You know, two of our children expressed interest. The church has lost how many generations? My classmate's father was a farmer. He became a farmer and a priest too. But another guy's a dentist. His father was a dentist. Another guy, doctor's father was a doctor. How many of them could have become married priests? My son was interested years ago. Or a daughter thinking about vocation with the church, and then she heard about one of these molestations in a rectory or something, and it turned her off. And but how many? You know, these are good people. Like one daughter wrote, "My father's a priest." It was beautiful. The way she accepted him, she probably had a vocation. The priesthood. Doors are closed. So that's the hope here. We maybe open a door a crack or so, see what happens.
Here we are, 45 years later, and we are so happy and blessed. We have so much, and it just keeps coming back. And when you think of 9 grandchildren, wonderful in-laws, it's just, you know, we've come uphill.
And I didn't marry her for her money.
No, that's for sure.
She had nothing, I had nothing. Well, I had the camp.
Yes. So anyhow, it's been a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Lord, teach me how to love my wife.
And Lord, teach me how to love my husband.
Lord, teach my wife how to love me.
Lord, teach my husband how to love me.
Love you, wife.
I love you.